Israel Adesanya got a YouTube page, came out, gave an assessment of his fight. Now, let me tell you guys, I spoke to Adesanya 2 days after the fight. It was very light. It was a DM. Nothing to do with this topic. I will just share. I got a sense for his tone. I got a sense where his head was at. Now, when Adesanya was breaking down his own fight, you got to understand, you're dealing with a genius here. When people choose to go head-to-head with Adesanya about fighting, that's a hard one for me. This is a guy whose philosophy, training habits, performance, this is top shelf stuff. This is the best in the world. This is also the best that this division has ever seen. This division had Anderson Silva. It had Michael Bisping. It had Rich Franklin. I mean, this is a very coveted division. The late, great Evan Tanner is a very coveted division. Adesanya is the best to have ever done it at the weight class. So I do see when people start to argue with him about mixed martial arts, more specifically, his performance and his approach, I kind of got to turn my head a little bit and go, are you serious? You're actually questioning the champion, who, by the way, in a terrible performance, according to the critics, won every single round? I get a little bit lost. Now, Adesanya did at least appease the critics who said he coasted. That's another one for me, and I'm personalizing. That's hard for me. It's hard. I never had a hard fight or an easy fight if I was to personalize my own career. I never did. They were all the same. It was absolute chaos, and it was absolutely everything I had. So when I'm even told that somebody could coast, I have a hard time picturing it. I grew up in wrestling. I've done jiu-jitsu. There's times in wrestling and there's times in jiu-jitsu, no problem, I would fall into that category. Coasting, we even call it stalling. Eating up the clock. I never found that in my entire MMA career. And if you're telling me the guy is so goddamn good that while he's exhausted, which any human being would have to be, the human body is not made for a 25-minute sprint. It's just not. And in fighting, unlike the grappling arts that I just referenced, grappling arts, they're trying to score points on you. In fighting, they're trying to damage you. There is nowhere to stall. And the mere idea that he is so dominant, talking about Adesanya, that he's so good that he could coast and just play and eat up the clock to beat the world's #1 contender, I'm just not sure you're insulting him. I'm just not. Then, to boot, okay, this whole thing is overlapped by the fact that Adesanya versus Pierre is the #1 fight I want to see in the sport right now. That is the #1 fight. My #1 has been the same thing for 8 months. It's been St-Pierre versus Jon Jones. I now want to see Adesanya versus Pierre. The point that I'm trying to make, if he's coasting, if he's so bad, if he's so awful, if we're all so upset, how does he then go in to the biggest fight that the sport has to make? Those things, they don't add up. You can't do that. So we can't have it both ways. So what are we really doing here? We're seeing greatness, and we're trying to beat him the only way we know how. Verbally. We're trying to hurt his feelings because we can't beat him in the cage, right? Guys, let's be fair. Do you really feel that the guy is coasting? If so, where and how do you prove that? And what is it that you're saying about Jared Cannonier? I grew up under famed coach Roy Pitman. Roy Pitman has gone to a wrestling tournament every single Saturday for the last 58 years. When he walks into that tournament, he has a towel over his shoulder. Everybody knows what that towel is for. It is for a time that Coach Pitman's athlete coasts. He will stop the match and he will forfeit. His guy will lose if his guy ever coasts while attempting to make the opponent look bad. If his guy starts showing off or showboating in a way to make the opponent look bad, he will stop the match and his guy will lose. And I only bring that to you because I'm not sure the insult, not sure you're aware, the insult that you're giving to Jared Cannonier. You're saying not only did he lose, not only was it not ultra competitive, but it was a guy that wasn't going his hardest. And I don't think any of us mean that. And I don't think any of us can also do the deduction that Adesanya had this horrible fight that we all despise, that we're never going to buy again. Oh, by the way, when is his next one with Pierre? That is the number one on my list to watch. They don't add up. Now, I'm not giving you a hard time. If this is about booing versus cheering, okay, there's two sides to the coin, and the fan has the equal right to both. You have praise and you have critiques. If that's all we're doing, I'll step aside. Please have at it. But there seems to be a chorus even coming from the smart marks and the cheap seats, the guys that are supposed to know, the guys in the back, fellow fighters. There seems to be this chorus about Adesanya and the way that he's managing a match, as opposed to trying to finish, that he's trying to get to the decision. I would argue for you that even the smart marks, even the boys in the back, even the fellow fighters, there's a level of brilliance that Adesanya is doing that even they don't understand. I would argue that for you. Mike Tyson famously said, I got credit. I said it on Joe Rogan's show, and Joe Rogan has said, Chael Sonnen said, but I stole it from Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson simply said, if you ever try to win by knockout, you will not win a decision. So when I talk to you about managing a match, there's a part in the fight where you are going to go just what you were planning for. In Adesanya's case, he's going to show off. He's going to put him away. He's going to stop him. There's a time where you will do that, but you must quickly be able to learn and pivot. Your goal must quickly be able to change, and your strategy must pivot if you're confronted with evidence in live battle that your strategy is not going to work tonight. If you stick with it and you stay with it, and you're out there trying to show off, and you're out there trying to appease the crowd. And one thing within Adesanya's response, I find him to be very mature, guys. I really wish that you would start listening to him instead of critiquing him, because you'll learn something. But one thing that I appreciated within his response is he's not letting it get to him. He is going into the biggest fight of his life next. Now, that's not because of you and me, guys. That's according to him. This is the monster in his closet. This is the guy who Izzy can say anything he wants. He didn't want this guy coming over to the sport. If the guy did come over, he wanted somebody to knock him off. He wanted Strickland to knock him off. I've been in Izzy's shoes. I just know what that's like to have somebody from your past. The other side of the coin is great. You welcome it and you embrace it. And the sooner we can do this, the better, because I got something for you, right? And one thing about Adesanya is he's going into the big fight. You got to dance with the one that brought you. Adesanya did not just get here with the punches and the kicks and the cool walkouts and the funny interviews. He got here being very level-headed. He got here being very strategic. And he got here by using his absolute best tools when he's in combat. Not trying to show off, not trying to do new stuff. Not trying to get the oohs and the ahs from the crowd. Trying to win this moment, defend here, attack here, move on to the next frame, rinse and repeat 5 times if necessary. And there was a real maturity in the way that Adesanya responded. Because I know many of you are like me. You're Team Adesanya. You're happy to see this young man reach his goal and be doing so great. Don't panic. If that's the spot you're in, don't panic. He's very mature. This is not bothering him. It's not going to get to him. He's coming off what people are doing nothing but criticizing, and he's going to go into the biggest fight the sport can make. Those two things don't work, just so you understand. And I can't remember a great that didn't face this at some point. There was a time when Khabib couldn't get to the main event because he was boring. He would take people down. There is a time right now where Islam is being held back because he takes people down and he's boring. George St-Pierre, who sold more pay-per-views than anybody, took everybody down, and he kept them there for 25 minutes. So it's one of these things, right? You got to be able to pivot in a fight. You got to know when your toast is burnt. You got to know when a strategy is not working. You got to know when your plan has to be changed. Your goals sometimes have to change right there in the fight. It's a terrible spot. But the guys that can do it, like Adesanya just did, these are the champions. They don't get frustrated. They figure it out. They were planning to be out there 8 minutes and be on Eugene Berryman's shoulders and pumping your fists and moving on from, they got to be out there 25. They got to put up with the crowd. They got to wonder what the judges are seeing. It's a sign of maturity. And if you don't appreciate it, I don't blame you. We're spoiled as MMA fans. I'm just sharing for you. If you want to win this argument, if you want to hurt Adesanya's feelings, he cannot have had a terrible performance that's going to lead into the biggest fight of his career. Those don't work. So you got to get your math a little bit better. You got to sharpen up your insults. Be careful because you're putting down Cannonier. The same as you put down Whitaker. I don't think that was your intent. Fire up the keyboard and try again.